what results are tied to your name. Google is treating your name as an entity and it's trying to define that. If you've done a really good job, then Google is going to show links that relate to your area of speaking focus. If you've been speaking on a lot of different topics, if you've been experimenting with your speaker bios, if you've been all over the place, that page one of results is not going to be so cohesive and it's not going to look like what you want it to look like.
This is Be in Demand, the podcast for people who are ready to be seen as the expert, grow their business, and get that next big promotion. I'm your host, Laurie-Ann, and I have more than 25 years of experience of speaking on stage and working with thousands of clients. And here's what I can tell you. Speaking is not about being perfect. It is about being powerful, clear, and connecting with those that you're speaking to. Because when you know how to use your voice and your story, you get heard and noticed. Laura, welcome back. Not many
Hey,
people come back on the show. Not that I wouldn't let them, but I loved how this whole SEO conversation that you and I have been having behind the scenes. And I was, you gotta come back and we gotta talk about this again because I think it's that important. So would you just introduce yourself to the audience, please?
yes, absolutely. And thank you, Laurie-Ann, for having me back on. I do think the time is so appropriate for having this sort of part two conversation. And I am really jazzed about it. But yeah, so I am an SEO strategist for service providers and service based small businesses. And I am concerned with helping folks build a reputation, grow their audience, and fill client rosters through the power of their websites.
Okay. Thank you. I'm just thinking of what we were talking about before we hit record. What is, because there's traditional SEO, but there's this thing that you've been talking about with me, reputation SEO. So let's just dive right in. Everybody's heard of SEO,
Yeah,
but traditional versus reputation, I'm sure that there's some people that are scratching their heads right now, like reputation.
I
What do
know,
I?
right? Let's just make up some more terms. But I am going to back up just for a second and just define SEO because there's inevitably someone who is like SEO what? So we're talking about search engine optimization, traditionally the art of getting your website to appear at the top of search results and increasingly in AI search results. When we talk about traditional SEO, we're really talking about discoverability as it relates to a website. When I talk about reputation SEO, I'm talking about the strategic practice of shaping the story that appears when somebody searches for you. So, especially what shows up in page one of Google search results, right? So, someone searches you, they can find your website, but what are they going to see even before they get there? They're going to see everything else, everything else that populates page one. And that creates a really important first impression before they even click.
One question for you, Laura, before we move on. If you want to test your own, how good is Google's Chrome's incognito? Will you actually get a real representation, or do you need to call a friend to say, "Hey, look up my name"?
I think that's a really great question. So, incognito is pretty good. It will eliminate a lot of the personalization that goes into a Google search in a non incognito, an open browser or an open tab. It still is going to be localized.
Mhm.
So Google personalizes search results based on its profile of you, also where you're located, where you're making the search from. So it certainly doesn't hurt to ask a friend who is somewhere else in the world what they see when they Google you.
Okay.
Ultimately, everybody sees a different set of Google results when they search for anything. So there's
Okay.
no sort of definitive set of top 10 results for any given query. It's more of a rolling average.
Okay. Okay. That's something that I've always wondered because I'm noticing that when I go into incognito, I'm just like, I don't know how valid this is. Like, I really could have somebody else do this and probably get vastly different
Yeah.
results. And this is the whole starting point with reputation SEO.
Mhm.
is to know what we're dealing with, right?
Yeah. I think that's a great first step. Go audit your page 1. Hopefully, it's topped by your own website, maybe a LinkedIn profile and other reputable looking third party mentions of you. So other speaking opportunities, other websites and articles that mention you. If someone's trying to vet you and they Google you and the only thing that comes up is a website or a social profile or your addresses that you've lived at since you were 18, it's
Yes.
not incredibly confidence inspiring, right? You want to
No.
fill up that page 1 with confidence inspiring links.
Okay, so that's homework number 1 for everybody is to make sure they go look at what happens when your name is Googled. All right, so let's just say, because we've got an audience full of speakers and let's say an event organizer, or it could also be like the coach of a mastermind, so somebody who's going to reach out to you. So how is Google already shaping the impression of us speakers, of us coaches who speak?
Well, I think it comes back to what we've already talked about, right? It is what results are tied to your name, right? So Google is treating your name as an entity and it's trying to define that. And so if you've done a really good job, then Google is going to show links that relate to your, as a speaker, your area of speaking focus. If you've been speaking on a lot of different topics, if you've been experimenting with your speaker bios, if you've been all over the place, that page 1 of results is not going to be so cohesive and it's not going to look like what you want it to look like.
All right, can you say more about that if you have been basically messing around and editing and changing
Mhm.
your speaker bio?
Yeah. So Google and LLMs, like they're looking for coherence. Well, even let's back up a second. They're trying to establish trust,
Okay.
right? What people do they trust? What websites do they trust? And there's a number of things that go into that. One is third party validation, right? So that's links. But another thing is coherence. It's how often when it comes to people, how often is this person associated with this topic? And the more often a person is associated with a topic, and the tighter the associations between a person and the topics they're associated with, like the tighter that focus, the more coherence there is, the more credible that looks, the more likely it is that Google is going to show you in search results related to that topic.
Okay. So this brings up like 2 other questions for me. One is, what if somebody who's listening to this is making a pivot?
There'll be a lag.
How much of a lag?
That's a great question, Laurie-Ann. I feel like I would be blowing a little smoke if I gave you an exact time frame.
Mhm.
But what we can say with like website SEO is generally there's a 3 to 6 month lag. And so I'd imagine if you're making a pivot in your speaking career, it's going to be something on the same order. And it will also depend on how frequently you are speaking and appearing because you've got to create enough content for Google to understand that pivot. So if you're pivoting, but you only speak twice in 6 months, that's probably not enough content to signal to Google that you've made that pivot. If you're pivoting, you want to make sure you've updated your website, you've updated your socials to reflect that, and that you are doing a visibility tour to support that pivot. And by creating that all those links, creating all that content, associating your name with that new focus over and over and over again, you will speed up the process of shaping your page 1.
Okay. And by a visibility tour, because I'm sure people are like, "What does that mean? Like, how do I do that?"
Is there a formal definition of a visibility tour? What
I
I
don't know, but
am
what's Laura?
Yeah, what I mean when I say that is essentially booking yourself a pile of speaking opportunities when it comes to speaking, I'm not a professional public speaker, but I would imagine that it is easier to book a number of podcast
Mhm.
guest interviews than it is to book a large number of on-stage speaking events. So if I were making a pivot, I would be focusing on those lower hanging fruit opportunities. So start booking interviews where you just get to talk on other people's platforms about your new focus. And then that's going to support your online reputation so that when you're going after the bigger speaking events, your reputation will reflect your new area of focus.
Okay, I got a question for you. I'm just
Okay.
thinking back to some of my past, more recent past speaking events. Very intimate group of 7 CEOs. That's one of them. Another one I'm thinking of, like, it was a podcasting audience. Again, a small audience of about 25. These particular types of groups don't necessarily talk about, hey, they don't have a web page, the CEO
Mhm.
group. The podcasting audience, I mean, she probably didn't post, here's who's speaking at our monthly meeting. So is there a way that as a speaker like myself, that I can take control of that? How do I use those events so that we're building that trust with Google?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, one is make sure you are seeking out opportunities that do create those links. So that's like the podcast guesting, right? But then this is where your website is also essential. So
Mm,
make sure you have a speaker page. Well, I mean, make sure you have foundational solid SEO on your website because one page, Google doesn't evaluate a single page, it evaluates a whole website, right? But within your website, make sure you have a speaker page. And on your speaker page, you can highlight these events where you've spoken or these containers in which you've spoken. So you can take control of curating, I mean, creating almost like a resume, right? Like your
yeah.
speaker page can be a resume of places that you've spoken before. And it's possible if you're doing a lot of these small containers that not every single one is going to generate a link or a mention. And that's okay, right? That's okay because they're reps and they're still building relationships and brand awareness and all these other really wonderful things. But in terms of your online reputation, the way I would capitalize on those that don't naturally produce their own links or mentions is by including them on your website somewhere and
Okay.
talking about them on your socials.
All right. So on my socials, not just like IG stories that's going to disappear, just so that there's
Yeah, so
evidence.
Google indexes Instagram and LinkedIn posts now. They don't tend to rank. I mean, they're not going to rank more highly than, say, your website, but they are indexed. Instagram stories have no value in that regard. If there's something that you want deposited in the internet,
Hmm.
put it in a post.
Okay. Okay. I think those are important. Thank you for answering that question because I'm just thinking of like things that I can do. And I know that there's other people that are listening to this, like they can do this also to make this little, here are the different places that I've spoken at.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I'll also say I do a lot of summit speaking things that don't necessarily stay live on the internet. But
Mhm.
another way that you can capitalize on that is by creating content out of those speaking events, instances, opportunities. You can turn them into not only social posts, blog posts, you can use them as inspiration to create other SEO content.
The last time I had you on the show, it was like a masterclass on SEO, and I'm gonna make sure that I refer, like, people, like, to also listen to that episode. Hey, while we are talking about podcasts and other speaking events, so if you could just explain to people how being on somebody else's podcast, being a speaking opportunity for a small or larger or an industry mention influence since we're talking about podcasts and speaking engagements, how does being a guest on somebody else's podcast, these different speaking events and industry mentions influence how a speaker is perceived in the search?
That's a great question. One, consider that every time you speak, it's like an independent confirmation of your expertise, an independent instance. And as we've been talking about repetition across platforms, it strengthens trust, right? It contributes to that coherence of a signal. right? Google's always looking for a signal. So as you are accumulating these appearances, these engagements, these mentions, really trying to maintain a consistent topic, associate yourself with a consistent title and position, and that will help Google. It's again, it's that repetition that will help Google really understand who you are, where your area of expertise is.
Reminding me of repetition is the mother of skill.
Hmm.
All right. What are the most common reputation gaps that you see that are holding great speakers back from getting booked?
Okay. One is the bios, like using inconsistent bios, because especially when we start thinking about LLMs and people showing up more and more in AI searches, these engines are by nature language prediction models. They're trained on repetitive language. And if you're not creating repetitive language around your own name, you're not going to show up there. So you have to, like, every time you have your bio gets used on a podcast, on a speaking page, on a meeting page, consider that syndication. It's syndicated
Okay.
across every platform, the podcast players, everything. And your media bio shows up more places on the internet than probably any other single piece of copy you've ever written. It shows up over and over and over again on so many different platforms, and you really wanna pick one and stick with it. Don't rewrite this every time you
All right. I'm
and
giggling
like you said,
because
I'm reshaping mine right now,
yeah.
and there's a lag, right? But stick with one for a long period of time. I've used the same media bio for about 2 years.
Okay.
So that's one.
Let me just pause here for a moment. I want to share something that Laura is doing. You already know that getting booked to speak often starts with somebody Googling your name or your topic. And when they land on your website, it needs to reflect the expert that you are. So, Laura is opening the doors to a Search Ready, which is a 12-week done with you SEO mentorship for expert service providers like you who are tired of watching the less qualified people outrank them. By the end of this 12 weeks, she has told me that you are going to have a website that you are proud to share and proud for people to find, one that shows up in search and makes the right people want to reach out to you. The doors to this are closing on May 1st. I know it's a little bit of a rush. The link is down below so that you can have all the details. And by the way, she is going to be doing a webinar today on April 20th. Feel free to reach out to her and ask her for the replay if you are listening to this after the 20th. Okay, let's get back to the interview with Laura.
And then the other is that unclear speaking focus. If you're too scattered in the subjects that you talk about, I've done a lot of things in my life, right? And I could still talk about women's health, right? I had someone recently ask me to participate in something talking about experiences going through cancer treatment. I mean, I have a PhD in oceanography. I could talk about things related to that, right? There's a lot of things I know a lot of stuff about, but the online reputation that I am trying to cultivate is around SEO. And so when I am speaking, it's not that I even need to pitch the exact same topic every time, right? The topic that I pitched to you for this conversation is SEO for speakers. I don't I don't pitch the topic SEO for speakers every time I pitch a podcast, but I do pitch conversations around SEO, right?
SEO. Okay.
And so picking a focus and really trying to stay tight to that focus is so, so important.
Okay. Question about the bios because this might be something that I'm guilty of,
Mhm,
not using the same bio. It's generally the same. However, I just pitched to be on a more of a corporate
mhm.
podcast. So her audience is HR, executive leaders. So I'm giving her a bio that is more geared towards that audience versus if I was speaking on a podcast that was for coaches and consultants, I'm going to give her a different bio. Are you saying don't do that?
I think you need to be careful about what makes the bios different. If it's just slightly different language, like slightly more formal versus more casual language, I think that's fine. If you are in one instance saying that I'm Laurie-Ann and I'm a speaking coach for coaches, and then in the other one you're saying I'm Laurie-Ann and I'm a speaking coach for corporate leaders, that sends two different signals. And
Okay.
so is it okay to do that once or twice? Sure. And if you truly do have two different speaking audiences, my feeling is Google will pick those up over time, right?
Okay.
If you're really speaking frequently on both of these things, but I wouldn't remake yourself for every single audience that you're speaking to. So then when you're speaking to course creators, now all of a sudden you're not Laurie-Ann, who is a speaking coach for course creators. And then next week you're Laurie-Ann, a speaking coach for lawyers. You don't want to recreate your bio for every single audience that you're speaking to. If you
Okay.
frequently speak to corporate, and so you have one bio for that audience, I think that's probably okay.
Okay.
But don't spread yourself too thin.
Okay. I'm going to have to go back and look at my bios because I have a document where I keep them all.
Mhm.
And this is for this kind of an audience, and I even date it.
Oh,
And
that's
I, so I
brilliant.
know when I used it and how long I've had it. Because I've been doing so many podcasts for so many years. When somebody asked me to be on their show, I mean, it's like I'm copying and pasting stuff
Yeah.
to answer all their questions. So I'm glad that we chatted about that. Okay. So if a speaker could fix just one thing, if you could recommend one thing for them to improve how they look in searches, what should they focus on first?
Oof, it's so hard to think of one
I
thing.
know.
I think I'm gonna go back to what we talked about in your last question, which it's kinda two things, but really strengthening that name topic association. So really looking at what are you speaking about and making sure that you are getting known for one thing, and then taking a look at your media bio archive.
Apparently,
Right?
yes.
And trying to come up with a sort of consensus bio that you really can use most of the time
Okay.
so
Okay.
that
I
you
like
become and so think carefully about the thing that you and how you phrase it. For a long time, I'll just use this as an example. For a long time, the media bio that I was using is or started out with Laura Jawad as an SEO strategist for female service providers and female founded businesses. And now I'm starting to move away from gendered language. So the bio I gave you is Laura Jawad is an SEO strategist for service providers and small service-based businesses. Okay. But right now, if you were to go into ChatGPT and say, who's the best SEO strategist for female service providers? My name will come up because I've been syndicating that language for so long. It does not mean there aren't other people who are great at this, right? It means I've done a really good job of syndicating this media bio, but also it's so literal that then if you were to go in and say, who's the best SEO strategist for just service providers, somebody else's name is going to come up. It is very specific. So think long and hard about what it is that you want to be associated with because the LLMs in particular, that's ChatGPT, Perplexity, Gemini, they will associate you with that thing that you put next to your name all the time.
my God, this it feels like another big task to do.
But it almost isn't, right? It's like the antithesis of a big task because I'm telling you to just come up with a media bio, set it and forget it. So
True.
the big decision, I guess, is how are you framing yourself? I don't even actually think it's that huge of a decision. You can't be associated with every single permutation of or variation of your job title. Only one, right?
Right.
So you have to just pick one and
Yeah.
trust that at some point the way I think about keywords with traditional Google search, I think this will be helpful. I think about keyword targeting sort of like bowling, right? Because people often get upset because it's like even a page on your website, you have to pick one phrase to optimize for. And people are like,
Mhm.
oh, but I also want to get found for this, get found for this. Okay. When you go bowling, if you want to strike, where do you aim?
Dead center.
Dead center, right? And that maximizes your chance of taking out all the pins.
Yes.
What happens if you don't aim?
What it's random.
You
I
probably are gonna end up in the gutter or you're
in the
gonna take out
gutter.
a side pin, right? And so by just optimizing for something, you get you take out all the pins around it, right? It's like you get known for related you get known for that topic. But you have to focus on something or you're not gonna be known for anything.
I
It
love
doesn't
that
mean that you're only
analogy.
ever gonna get found for this one word, but you have to set a focus around something.
Okay, I really like that. That's a great analogy.
Thank you. I suck at bowling, but I'm good at SEO.
Yes, you are. It reminds me of when we would go bowling as a family. My one of my younger sisters, she would I mean, the bowling ball was too heavy for her, so she would pick it up, she would put it on the ground, she would squat down, and she would push the ball.
Mhm.
She got I mean, the ball, like, rolled down the aisle so slow, but she hit that number 1 pin, and it was like, "Damn." She was slow and steady, and
She had a
she
strategy
she did.
and it
Okay,
worked
so
for her.
all right, I got one more question for you.
Okay.
How should us speakers think about reputation SEO long term? If they want, like, consistent bookings, not just the one-offs, and also just to build up that reputation?
Yeah. I think it's helpful to think about it as a career level asset, right? Your reputation SEO is a career level asset, and it is something that is accumulated and reinforced over time, not over one really intense work day. And
Okay.
so you don't have to feel overwhelmed in the sense that you've got to figure it all out today.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm
I
doing.
think it's helpful to set your North Star,
Mhm.
right? But then you're just going to use those materials, use that focus, and over time you're going to accumulate these opportunities and these mentions, and that's gonna shape the signals that tell Google what you do and what you know a lot about. So don't think of it as a problem you have to solve today. It's something that is going to be shaped over time.
Okay, I like that a lot. It's about the long game, not the
Absolutely.
short
Yeah.
game.
Yeah.
Okay.
SEO, whether we're talking like traditional website SEO, reputation SEO, SEO is always a long game. It is never a short-term strategy.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah. My pleasure,
This
Laurie-Ann.
has been great. I know everybody's going to benefit from learning about this and just making people aware of this. Because, like you said, I believe that meeting planners are going into AI, whatever their favorite AI is, because they may not be going to Google for that will show your reputation. But also, if your reputation is great, you're going to show up in the AI.
Mhm.
And, that's what we want because I think some of them that might be their first line that they're looking also, and then
Yeah.
on to, like, level 2, like, how
Well,
is
and,
your messaging?
AI is particularly sensitive to these reputation signals.
Mm,
So, all the more important.
okay, so I got my homework assignments. I know what I need to do. So I hope that everybody else who's listening, I hope you were able to write down some notes and things that you wanna make sure that you're working on. But Laura, where can people follow you, learn from you, and
Yeah. Well, okay. So if anyone listening wants to get a clearer picture of how their website is functioning behind the scenes and how their reputation is intersecting with that, I have a free tool called the CEO's SEO Scorecard. And it's an assessment that takes about 2 minutes, and it'll give you a snapshot of where things are working really well and where you have opportunities, and particularly will expose opportunities around credibility and visibility. So I think really valuable and on topic for folks who are listening to this today. So I have a special link set up for Laurie-Ann that she will put in the show notes. And then, of course, my favorite platform is my website. So you can come check me out there at laurajawadmarketing.com. I have a blog full of helpful things. And my favorite social media these days is LinkedIn. So you can come connect with me there as well.
Fantastic. Fantastic. And definitely go follow her on LinkedIn. Her posts are absolutely, they're so informative and they're easy to read.
Oh, thank you,
So
Laurie-Ann.
thank you so much. So to everybody else, until next week, I want you to be in demand. Let me just pause here for a moment. I want to share something that Laura is doing. You already know that getting booked to speak often starts with somebody Googling your name or your topic. And when they land on your website, it needs to reflect the expert that you are. So, Laura is opening the doors to a Search Ready, which is a 12-week done with you SEO mentorship for expert service providers like you who are tired of watching the less qualified people outrank them. By the end of this 12 weeks, she has told me that you are going to have a website that you are proud to share and proud for people to find, one that shows up in search and makes the right people want to reach out to you. The doors to this are closing on May 1st. I know it's a little bit of a rush. The link is down below so that you can have all the details. And by the way, she is going to be doing a webinar today on April 20th. Feel free to reach out to her and ask her for the replay if you are listening to this after the 20th. Okay, let's get back to the interview with Laura.